Thank you. Hello, everybody. Before we get started, please stand up. Don't get too comfortable here. This is going to be an interactive session. Please put your arms straight up in the air. Please put your arms straight up in the air. Okay, I think we all got it. You can sit down again, please. What did we just experience? I gave you a very ambiguous message. I was asking you to do one thing, and with my body language, I was giving you a different instruction. When people do that, usually people will follow your actions and not your words. I think this is an effect you all know as leaders, that when you walk your talk, people will follow, but when they sense it as just, something you're saying but don't really mean it, people don't follow as easily. This is a well-known effect. Psychologists call it for imitation learning. It's the mechanism behind the fact that if you tell your kids to read books and sit in front of the TV all the time, they will probably become an avid TV watcher rather than a reader. The question is, why do we behave this way? What's the mechanism behind it? Let me tell you a story about a little monkey and a raisin. 20 years ago, there was a researcher called Giacomo Rizzolatti, and he had a laboratory where they were studying motor activity in the brain. So when you prepare a movement or when you're moving, the motor part of your brain has to do something, okay? And specifically, they were working with monkeys, so a typical day in the laboratory would look like this. You would have a monkey sitting in a chair. In front of him would be a bowl with nice snacks like raisins and nuts and whatever monkeys like to eat. And the job of the monkey was to grasp the food, okay? Just the way I could take this pen. They were studying the grasping movement. And each time the monkey would grasp for an object, you would hear a sound from the amplifier that was connected to the monkey brain. And let me see if I can do that for you. It would be like this. Okay, you would hear like a shooting sound. And this sound and this neuronal activity you could only hear when the monkey was grasping, not if he was waving or doing something else. Okay, so movement alone wasn't enough. You need to actually be grasping. How does that matter to you as a leader? Some monkey 20 years ago in a laboratory grasping food. It does not seem very relevant. But one day, something special happened. A lab assistant came into the room when the monkey was on a break. The monkey was still connected to the amplifier, measuring his brain activity, but he didn't do anything. And the student was kind of hungry, and he grabbed for the monkey food, so he was taking nuts and raisins and eating, and suddenly they could hear this. So the monkey's brain was active, even though the monkey wasn't doing a thing. That's how they discovered mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are neurons that will be active both when you do something or when you watch somebody else do the very same thing. This has huge ramifications for everything we do in a social context. We have a built-in system that will constantly measure what people around us are doing. Okay? This is the basis for empathy. This is also the reason why emotions will spread in a room so quickly. How does that matter to you as a leader? Well, now we don't study mirror neurons on monkeys so much anymore. It has gone mainstream, and we discovered that humans have a lot of mirror neurons too, and researchers are very active on exploring the details of mirror neurons. And they find that we don't respond equally strong to everybody. We respond more strongly with our mirror neuron system, mirroring the activity and the feelings of other people when these people matter to us. Who could matter more to your teams than you? You might say the client, but I think in the end, you as a partner might be even more scary or relevant to your teams, because it's you who decide whether they will be promoted or maybe fired or whatever you might call that. So you as leaders will in whatever you do, impact the people around you, because they will constantly, their mirror neuron system is very attuned to just you because you're so relevant in their lives, at least at work. So today I would like to discuss with you and show you how you can influence your own emotional state in order to be a better leader. Because we know that when a team is working hard on a project and the partner comes in and the partner is kind of stressed out and harassed and angry and in a bad mood, it will set people into a bad state, okay? They won't be their highest performing selves. And when the partner is calm and confident and, you know, happy about his life and how things are going, he will set everybody to work in a higher performing mode. So the problem with emotions is they are not so easy to control. You can't go to a funeral, be very sad, and then just say, okay, done with that, now I'm happy again. You won't. You can't tell yourself to not be stressed when you're stressed. It's not just something you can turn or off, on or off like your mobile, okay? So the good news is that neuroscience has really taken a look at how emotions are processed in the brain and how we can influence them. And that's what I would like to share with you today. At the end of the session, I want each and one of you to have very practical tools that you can use, okay? So this is not a theory lesson on neuroscience. This is about what you can do to influence your emotional state so that you will have a more positive impact on your clients or your teams or maybe even at home. So in order to understand how you can influence your emotions, let me first show you how emotions are processed in the brain. That's what we will start with. I only have these 40 minutes, and we will have questions afterwards, but if for whatever reason you can't follow or you have a very urgent question, please do it right away. Don't sit here like a prisoner for 30 minutes and then at the end say, I didn't understand a word, okay? So feel free to ask important questions at any moment, and I'm happy to adapt whatever you need. Oops. Well, I have more of those. Here's how the brain processes emotions. If this is the brain, let's say seen from the side, here you would have the eyes, so this is kind of a cut in half. Here's what we have and call the prefrontal cortex. That's a part of the brain that's located quite here at our forehead, and that's the part of our brain that we need for highest performance. I mean, this is your goal as a partner, both to be very high performing, and I imagine that this group has been very successful in the past, otherwise you wouldn't be hired as direct partners at EY. So you must have a very high performing prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for logical thinking, decision making, all kinds of planning. It's what makes us human. If you look at animals, they usually don't have a well-developed prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is also the seat of something that we call executive functions. Executive functions are things like the ability to delay gratification or to plan ahead, to not go for the instant gratification. Also the power to inhibit. Maybe you would rather lay at the beach at the moment, but you're sitting here. Okay, why are you doing this? Your prefrontal cortex is helping you to do that. It's also the part of the brain that will only mature at age 18 or 21. So if you have small children at home or teenagers or had in the past, you will instantly understand why they behave the way they do. The prefrontal cortex hasn't been fully developed yet. And to just give you just one final detail about this, there was this so very famous marshmallow test where they would take a toddler or like a 4 or 5-year-old child and they would put one marshmallow in front of the child, okay, and tell the child, okay, you get the marshmallow, you can eat it now, be my guest, or you can wait for 5 minutes and then you get 2. And then they left the room and they videotaped the children. Some of the children were really staring at the food. Some of them were trying to distract themselves. Some just took it and ate, People defer to the extent to which how they react to the marshmallow on the table. It turned out that the children who were able to wait for 5 minutes were the ones that were also more successful as adults, because they made a long-term study out of that. So if you have well-developed executive function allowing you to inhibit and to delay gratification and to plan your actions rather than doing whatever, it normally makes you a very successful person. So this is what your prefrontal cortex can do to you, for you, or with you, whatever. And this is also, this is the part of the brain that we use really for performance. The bad news is, if we think of performance, another part of the brain is actually way more relevant. And it's a part of the brain called the limbic system. The limbic system is the seat of our emotions. That's where we process emotions. And there's two basic reactions. When somebody approaches you and you like that person, you will probably get some kind of reward response. So when something positive happens, you eat something you like, or you meet somebody you like, or somebody gives you a compliment, it puts us into a reward state. When we're in a reward state, dopamine will be released. And dopamine is a substance in the brain for good feelings. It's the same system that is active when you take drugs or when somebody takes drugs. And the key is the reward comes quickly, it goes quickly. You need more of the same to get your reward. So if you're used to having a certain salary this year, to get equally happy next year, you would need that salary plus something. In a marriage, it's probably not enough to say, I love you once at the beginning and then expect that positive feeling to last. Okay? Rewards come and go. It's very powerful, but it's also kind of short term. Yeah? Dopamine is released, it comes, and it's gone. Now, what's the opposite of that? Threat. When something unpleasant happens, we go into threat. More common, also known as a fight or flight. It's when your body, when your brain or your amygdala, which is the part of the brain that you might have heard processes negative emotions, releases cortisol, and cortisol will go into your bloodstream and make you feel miserable. Okay, so that's negative stress of all kinds. The thing about threat is it can last forever. Okay? To take up the marriage example, you can say, once you look fat in that dress, and it will be remembered for 30 years. Okay? Why is that so? Our brain is not like a computer. It's not a neutral machine processing information coming from the outside. It's not a blank slate. No, there's lots of built-in biases and mechanisms that will filter information coming from the outside. We do have something that is called a negativity bias. And what it means is that we do process negative information 9 times more strongly than positive information, on average. I mean, there's a reason. I mean, now you could say, too bad our brains are so stupid, right? Why can't it be neutral? Why can't it be perfectly be like a mirror of the outside environment? Why could that be? Why don't we have these neutral brain machines? Survival, yes. Your ancestors were people who were cautious. When they met a wolf in the forest and he was kind of angry, they ran away. And when they met him twice, they remembered that he was a bad guy and they ran away. So you don't make experiments with potentially dangerous situations. Better be safe than sorry. Okay. So this is an evolutionary mechanism which is designed for our own good, but it can create some problems in the workplace. because it's so much easier to make people unhappy than to make them happy. Okay? It's so easy to set somebody in a bad mood, but it's very hard to get out of it. Even more so, now you could say, I don't care if my team is happy as long as they work well, right? I mean, I've seen it could work for you to have that attitude. The only problem is when people are in a reward state, actually all that dopamine and the other hormones released will make your prefrontal cortex work better. So happy people, not in all situations, but on average, work better because they're more motivated and they're trying their best. And also their prefrontal cortex can focus on the job at hand and not about worrying what the partner's thinking and why the partner's mad. They can use their prefrontal cortex for their job. When people are in a threat state, to cut things short, the prefrontal cortex won't work properly. Because when something awful happens and you're in an emergency situation, you don't want to think of 10 creative, theoretical solutions to the problems. Evolutionary, we would either run or we would fight, and that would save our lives. So we don't need our prefrontal cortex when we are in threat. Now the thing is that the biggest threat to us are normally the people around us, because we used to live in small societies where people would interact with each other, and if you didn't get along with the people who you lived with, that probably meant that you were destined to die soon because nobody would be there to protect you. So you don't need a real life danger situation to go into threat. So I think that's all you need to know about the brain at the moment. Okay? I want you to remember that it's so much easier to go into threat than into the reward, and that if you're in a threat state, your prefrontal cortex doesn't work so well anymore. So if your goal is to be high-performing and to have a high-performing team, you better find a way to at least get them out of threat or put them into reward. And that's what we are going to look at now, how you can achieve that. Imagine you get paid to watch a movie, a very emotional movie, okay? There might be some difficult content, like people fighting with each other or some injured people. This is what psychologists did in an experiment. So they had people watching a movie, and then they divided them into two groups before. One of the group was just watching, okay? So imagine let's say this part of the room is just watching the movie. Okay, so you get 10 minutes of paid movie watching, you just get to watch it. And this part of the room, your job would be to stay neutral in your face. So to inhibit any display of emotions while you're watching it. Do you think you can do that for 10 minutes? Some yes, some no. Okay, we'll see about that. I see that you're unsecure about whether you can pull that off. It depends on the movie, I guess. But I think inhibition is a very popular emotional regulation strategy in business. You go to a meeting you don't like, there are people who make you feel uncomfortable. Well, maybe you just try to, pretend that everything's good, or you kind of stay neutral in that meeting. You're inhibiting all those negative feelings. So that's what researchers were trying to achieve with that setup. It turned out that there was a surprise memory test afterwards. Who do you think will remember better, that part of the room or that one? You think those people do better? Why? No inhibition. Thank you. Exactly. Because when our prefrontal cortex is busy inhibiting, it can't do much else. Okay? You might be even successful on keeping a poker face. Congratulations to you. But you could have sent a wax dummy or an avatar. What's the point of being in a business meeting when you're not really there to think of creative solutions and to think? So inhibition doesn't work. And I think people are trying to do it all the time. You know, you're just trying to tell yourself, I'm not angry anymore. It doesn't work, first of all. It doesn't work to inhibit feelings. It only sometimes makes them even more strongly because you're kind of encouraging the neural network for feeling angry. And even more so, it will kill your productivity because your prefrontal cortex is inhibiting. And one very negative impact that has been shown is that it will also put the people around you in threat. Because if I come here and say, hello, but you can sense that I'm not really friendly and that I'm not really meaning it, everybody will get this strange feeling that something is going on and they can't really put their fingers on it, but it makes you feel uncomfortable. You know, there's this, it's like having a bomb in the room and it can go off any minute. Especially when you're the partner and you're coming in and your team is sensing that something is wrong with you, but they don't know what, it will make them go crazy. It has been shown that blood pressure will go up. If somebody who inhibits comes to a room, the blood pressure of the people around him will go up. And blood pressure is a sign of high cortisol level and high stress. So if you don't want to, we decided we don't want to inhibit. It doesn't work. So what does work? Let me tell you about a young woman named Joanne. She came from England. She moved to a different country where she thought she found the love of her life. Okay, they got married, they had a child, a small baby, everything seemed perfect until it wasn't. So they got a divorce. She was very lonely, very sad about how things had developed. She found herself being a single mother of a very small baby, which is a tough job. She decided to move back to England, where she would at least have her family and friends, but then her mother died, so she didn't have much support. And on top of that, she also lost her job, so she ended up living on welfare. Now I could take that story further, and you're probably wondering, you know, which road is that woman taking now? She did not become an alcoholic. She did not sign up at the next mental hospital to go in long-term therapy, and she did not end up homeless on the street as a drug addict. This woman, as you might have guessed right now, or not, she spent that time writing her very first novel on a little wizard called Harry Potter. So she used that very difficult moment in her life to write the novel that made her a best-selling author. I'm talking about J.K. Rowling. What she had is something that psychologists call resilience. The ability to go through adversity and to come out as a winner and not as a loser. Normally, research would say when you have more than one critical life event at once, it will probably set you on a slippery slope of lots of mental and health-related problems. Not for her. So how did she find that emotional strength that we call resilience? And by the way, she married again and she had 2 more children, and we know she's one of the wealthiest women in the world. So I think her approach kind of worked. Resilience. That's what we're looking for when we look for long-term strategies of emotional regulation. It's not a quick fix in an emergency. It's something you can do to set yourself up for emotional stability overall. There's a genetic component to that, but as always with most things, you can also influence it. And here's I will give you 2 factors of how you can influence your personal resilience. There was research about entrepreneurs, and they would ask entrepreneurs, why do you want to start your own company? What's the point? You know, why are you doing this? And they would say, I want to have more time with my family. I feel kind of stressed at my job, so I want to have more freedom to lay on the beach and have free time. And then 4 years later, they would look at that very same group, the ones that were still entrepreneurs, and they would measure their cortisol level in the blood, which would indicate how stressed they were. And they were looking at how many hours they worked. They worked more hours They felt less stressed. The number one protection factor against stress is taking charge. When you feel that you have an active role in a process, the situation won't feel as bad. It's not the number of hours you work that are the problem. It's how about you feel about those hours. Are they a burden to you? Is somebody telling you to do that, or do you choose to do that? Imagine you went to psychotherapy, what that would do to you is always put you into an active seat, okay? Try to get ownership. I think you sitting here probably have a very active approach to life, or you wouldn't be here. But still, I think it's helpful in your difficult transition to remember that there's always something you can do. And if you can't come up with something, ask somebody else, get an outside perspective. But it's often not the situation that is stressing us, but the situation of feeling helpless or being a victim. So, taking charge has a very powerful impact on stress regulation. That's also why they found that high-level executives work more hours but feel less stressed. Okay? It's not the work environment per se that makes you sick. It's how you feel about it and whether you take charge and do something and are active. This was a mental technique for changing your emotional state. The problem with mental techniques is they're often very hard to do. I will show you an easy way out, like a shortcut when you're really in trouble. Imagine that there was a pill you could take, a new one, and it would reduce your cortisol level, it would raise your dopamine level for good ideas and enthusiasm and reward and creativity, it would raise your acetylcholine for learning and fresh ideas, and it would increase your serotonin for emotional stability. Does it sound promising to you? Something you would like to take? No side effects? No? And it will work instantly. There is no such pill. The pharma industry is trying, but there isn't. But there is something that will work just as well and no side effects, and it's for free. It's exercise and sleep. And I know, everybody's telling you to exercise, probably, because it has these positive health effects. But the best way to train your brain is actually by training your body, because body and brain are very much connected. If we take a look back at our brain here, you see the fight or flight response. Originally, when we're in a threat, we are supposed to fight physically or to run away physically. You're not supposed to just sit there and wait it out. Well, there is a freeze state, but it's not very beneficial. The cortisol stays. When you run or fight, cortisol gets washed out of your system. So we are designed to move in order to get rid of the stress in our system. Cortisol can stay very long. Exercising will just remove it more quickly. And sleep also will kind of rebalance out all your neurotransmitters during sleep, which has a very positive impact. So those two things, I showed you a mental approach to building resilience and a physical approach to building resilience. I would now like to show you some short-term strategies for regulating your emotions. I think even if J.K. Rowling was very resilient, she must have had bad days. So I will show you some strategies for when you have a very horrible day, something really bad is happening and you don't have time to exercise and do whatever. It's very quick fixes. They only take 2 minutes, each of them, okay? And I will show you one that is mental, one that is body-based, and one that is a mix of both. And that's what I would like for you to take out of that session. I think it's time for you to get up again, please. You're all very successful leaders. Can you show me how it feels like to be powerful so that I can see it? Can you show me how does it feel like? I see some people doing this, Some people standing like this, make yourself very big, and I see different approaches, but it's not about standing here like this, okay? You can sit down again. I think you could have, by sitting down, you could have put your feet on the table or whatever indication of power. You can just make yourself very big. This is something you can see. Powerful people will show that in their body posture. This is an approach Amy Cuddy had at the Harvard Business School. She was researching the effect that body language would have on how you feel. And what she did is she asked people to put themselves for 2 minutes in a power pose. Okay? So you stand 2 minutes like this, or 2 minutes you put your feet up on the table, or 2 minutes of whatever makes you really feel strong. And these were Harvard MBA students, okay? So all smart people. Half of them she put into a power pose for 2 minutes, half of them she put into a low power pose. So they had to sit like this and feel really powerless for 2 minutes. Then she would send them into a very stressful, demanding job interview. And guess what? And these were all very smart people, so it's not that she had the stupid group doing the low power pose and the smart one doing the power pose thing. It's what's equally distributed. After just 2 minutes of power posing, you could see that people's testosterone level for feeling powerful and dominant went up by 20%. That's not a little effect, let me tell you. So that by just 2 minutes of power posing, you get a 20% increase, making you feel better instantly. And they got a 25% reduction in cortisol, just like that. And that's also how they reported. They felt much better. And even more so when they looked at who got hired, because they asked interviewers to then decide which candidates they would like to have on their job. They took the people from the high power condition, okay? So just 2 minutes of power posing can make a difference whether you get that job or not. For you, maybe whether in that client pitch you get that client to sign with you or not. So I don't say that your group lacks confidence, or I'd assume you're not. But I'm just saying if you ever feel uneasy about something, if you feel nervous, if you feel stressed, you can just power pose for 2 minutes and it will instantly make you feel less stressed and more powerful, more in charge. This is something I don't advise it to be used. You don't have to do it in this situation. When you're with a client, maybe putting your feet up on the table is not the best strategy. You can do that in the privacy of your car or your office prior to the meeting, so you don't come across as a bully, which might have a different effect then. Just very quickly, I want to show you why this works, in case you're interested. It goes quick. We do have a part of our brain that's called the insula. And the insula is constantly picking up signals from our body. So if I stand like this, the insula will tell my brain, ooh, she must feel kind of stressed and uncomfortable. And then the insula will tell my limbic system, she feels stressed and uncomfortable, and then more cortisol will be released. The same way, if I'm in a power pose, the insula will tell my limbic system, oh, she must be feeling great, so let's release some more dopamine. So it's almost impossible to trick your brain mentally into feeling better by telling yourself, I am powerful when you don't feel powerful. But you can use your body to trick your brain rather easily. So that's a shortcut. Just to give you a reason why, I think it's always interesting to see why things work. Where's my power posing? I didn't put it here. Power posing is one thing you can do. That was a body-based approach. Let me give you a mental one, so you have some variety. At the end, I want you to have 3 techniques, and then you choose one that you think might work best for you. Riyad asked you, how do you feel at the moment? That's all you need to do with that technique. You need to ask yourself, how do I feel? And then you need to label it. That technique is called effective labeling. Might sound too simple. Maybe take a moment to do that. Ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And write it down or decide for yourself how you feel. The key is to be honest. It's not about writing down how you wish you felt. Okay? Got it? Now the thing is, some of you might think, I'm not going to do this. I feel miserable and tired at the moment. Telling myself that I'm miserable and tired won't make things better, will it? You know, I won't go down that road. I won't tell myself that I'm a stressed out loser. I need to tell myself positive things. No, if you tell yourself positive things, it's like inhibition, it doesn't work. But stating how it is actually shifts away attention from your limbic system to your prefrontal cortex, because you're busy searching for the words. It's kind of a shift. Research where it's been done is they have done affective labeling in the brain scanner, okay? And they looked at people while they were doing affective labeling. The amygdala, which is responsible for the threat response, really reduced its activity. And the right ventral lateral prefrontal cortex increased its activity. So they've really found a shift away from the threat system to the prefrontal cortex. It's like focusing, it's a little bit like distracting yourself. You know, a little kid is crying for something, you give him a new toy, it stops instantly. It's a little bit the same thing for adults. It works for kids too. So if you manage to put your feelings into words, it will have an instant impact on your limbic system, and it will put your prefrontal cortex to work again. You can do this silently in a meeting. That's what I like about it. You don't have to tell your colleagues, I'm doing affective labeling. You can just do it for yourself. It's like a secret weapon. You can also tell a friend. You can write it down. That's why writing a diary or writing an email sometimes is so liberating. Okay? It really works, and the more often you practice it, the better. I have one final exercise that is a combination of a body-based technique with a mental technique. It comes from a movement that's called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was a MIT professor, went to Harvard, and he developed that. And it's an 8-week program where you really transform your brain. He originally did that for medical students. When you're a medical student and you're really stressed out, you don't want to cut somebody's arm in surgery because you've been stressed. You want to stay in charge even when you're very stressed. So he developed an 8-week program. If you go through this, you will really become emotionally stable, and your prefrontal cortex works better, and your limbic system is more stable, and your empathy increases. It's like a miracle cure for the brain. I don't expect you to go through an 8-week mindfulness program. I told you I'm going to show you things that work in business that you can just do in 2 minutes. So I show you a shortcut to mindfulness. It's called STOP. You can do it wherever you are. So we can do it together here and now. It will be our final exercise. STOP starts with stop. So whatever you're doing, stop it. It doesn't mean that you have to run out of the room, okay? It just means that if you were thinking of something or writing something down or drinking a glass of water, just stop it. Then as the next thing, take a breath, and I will give you a few moments to take a really deep breath. So breathing in and out, it's the deep belly breathing. Really do it. If I don't hear anything, you're not doing it correctly. So take deep breath. I can hear you now. And then the next step is observe. So that's when you can ask yourself, how do I feel right now? What's happening in the room? What's going on? Where am I? What am I doing? It's a moment for reflection. And then finally, you will proceed with whatever it is you were doing. When you're really good at this, it might only take you a minute. Okay? And nobody again, it's a thing you can do invisibly. Nobody has to know what you're doing. You might discover that this final exercise encompasses many of the things we discussed today. Take a breath is a body-based approach. It's similar to exercise, sleep, and power posing. It's engaging your body to trick your brain. When you're deep breathing, your brain will think that you're relaxed even if you're not, and put you into a more relaxed state as a result. Observe, that's a mental technique. You could use that moment to do some emotional labeling. It's a moment for reflection, so it's a mental approach. And proceed, you might get a hunch, is nothing else but take charge. In that observation stage, if you realize the meeting with a client or with a team really doesn't go in the right direction, change it, take charge. So this one exercise, and actually 1 minute, allows you to do many of the things that we discussed today. I hope I helped you to understand your brains better and why it's so hard to control emotions. And even more so, I hope I invited you to really take charge and take charge of your emotions so that you're happier and more productive. I mean, you are all very productive, but you're going through a difficult time, and I hope I gave you some tools that you can really put to use, and as a result, be a more impactful leader. Thanks for today. That was Stop. I stop now. That's it.
That was great. Okay, let's turn up the lights a little bit so we can see people, and we've got some mic runners around so we can ask some questions. But if you've got questions at any time, even when somebody is asking a question, just put your hand up and they'll come running to you. In the meantime, one observation actually. So you were saying that people in a positive state perform better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not
so engage.
always.
Not always. Okay.
Yes, but yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to tell the Director of Knit Partners is that every year we run a global people survey. We call it GPS, a bit like government and public services. We have acronyms that mean the same thing. But anyway, global people survey, once a year we run it, and the main thing we are looking for is a score around how well we're engaging our people. Nancy talked about it yesterday. And we've proven time and time again that the highest engaged business units are the ones that perform the best. So when we do a great job at engaging people, we know it results in actual business performance. The question for you would be, well, one from the floor that's just come through the app actually, is meditation. Do you recommend it? Does it really work?
It does work. When you do the mindfulness-based stress reduction approach, it's an 8-week program, and I mean, all the funds in neuroscience are going into this mindfulness research because it's a done deal. It always works. And what do people want when they give fund to research? That something positive comes out of it. 8 weeks of mindfulness-based stress reduction meditation, and your prefrontal cortex will increase in thickness and become more powerful. Your insula for body awareness will grow and make you a more sensitive leader who picks up small signals and small warning signs. And your empathy pathways will also be enhanced. And your immune system, and if you look that up, you will find tons of really science-based evidence that it does work.
Questions, if you can raise your hands if you've got a question. There's one over there.
I have one question, Friederike. And thanks for all the dopamine that you gave us with all the compliments, by the way. It really helps. Did you use this technique before you entered the stage today?
I did some power posing, but I did it while sitting there. I just make sure I don't sit there like this.
Okay, because you seem very aware of your attitude when you're there. So.
Yes, and I also do emotional labeling wherever I can. I also exercised this morning while you were in your sessions. I was at the gym. I had a full night of sleep because my children are not here. I'm doing all of that. Actually, I try everything out on myself, then I try it on my coachees. I always look for neuroscience stuff, and then yes. And for me, it works.
Sounds good. And to what extent, and then I'll stop with all the questions, but to what extent is this purely physical to you, because your approach is very physical, in my view at least, or also spiritually?
Spiritual. I'm not going down that road. I know there's lots of research. I don't have much to say about that, because in the neuroscience, from a spiritual connection, you can only look at, how religious people react differently to other people. It's not pure. I mean, when making a presentation like this for 40 minutes, you have to make choices. I could have given you 30 different techniques to enhance your emotional regulation, and you would have probably remembered nothing. So you need to make a choice. And when you want quick fixes and something people can use right away, using your body to change your emotions is just it's very much easier. Because mental approaches are hard. Like, for example, cognitive reappraisal. It's the approach of, when life gives you lemon, make lemon juice. If your child dies, you're not going to sit there and say, what good could come out of that? That's not going to make you feel any better. I'm not advising you to do that. I'm just saying these cognitive approaches, when you lose your job, to then say, oh, whatever, I will find a better one. You might say that, but do you feel it? So when you go out and exercise, it instantly makes you feel better. So I have taken a very physical approach today because these are techniques that work right away, and you don't have to have a lot of knowledge about it or special skills to really be successful at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So put your hand up if you've got a question. Meanwhile, a question from the app. You talked about, oh, this is dangerous. You talked about resilience, and one way of getting that was through exercise and sleep. We've got two questions here. One from South Africa, one from the UK, saying, how much exercise, how intense does it need to be, and how often do I have to do it?
To have a visible, measurable effect, it needs to be at least 20 minutes. That's what research has established. Twice a week for 20 minutes has a measurable impact. Obviously, if you can do more, that's good, but I know high successful people, they don't do 20 minutes twice a week. They will say, I run the marathon. Okay, so sometimes you have to stop yourself from being over-ambitious and then do nothing and implement that into your everyday life in a smart way. Because you have very limited time, you're traveling a lot. So just twice a week for 20 minutes will have an impact that you can measure.
And does meditation really help? Did I ask you that already?
Yes.
I thought so. I was like trying to pay attention to all this. So anybody else got a question up here, right at the front? We've got a question. In the meantime, let me ask you another. So trust is really important in our business, both trust of our teams and trust with our clients. Is there one thing that we can really do to improve trust and get there quicker?
Be honest. I think that's, when we have the mirror neuron system, and actually research has shown that we're quite good at detecting liars. And we will sense when a smile is fake, and it will leave a queasy feeling. So if you're able to be honest with your teams and your clients, they will appreciate it. Even if you have bad news, people appreciate that you bring them the bad news and say, I'm really sorry about this, rather than trying to sugarcoat things and to mingle your way out of it. People appreciate honesty because it doesn't send off their mirror neuron radar of something is wrong.
Okay, let's go to the question.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much. That was absolutely fascinating. It's brilliant. But really, this isn't a question. It's just more of a information giving for those in UK and I in particular. We have a mindfulness network in UK and I. It's a fairly new network, and the 8-week program which you've spoken about has been trialled twice or even three times throughout the past year or so, and it's focused on mindfulness in leadership and also mindfulness in coaching. I've done it. I have to say I think it's brilliant. Can't say that I did it for the 10 minutes every day that they say, but the techniques that you've described I find invaluable.
Okay. Another question from the app that somebody's given is, how much sleep should somebody get? You see, we love numbers, yeah? How much of this and how much of that?
I expected that. There's research that say that, about 8 hours are good. If you sleep more, something bad happens. If you sleep less, something bad happens. It's also highly individual. Now I will give you how long would you sleep if there wasn't an alarm going off or somebody waking you up? Do you feel relaxed when you wake up, or do you feel, like an owl? There is an average of 8 hours, but obviously it doesn't work for everybody. Women need more sleep than men.
So if somebody out there is getting 5 hours a day, I often have partners, especially new to the firm, coming up to me and saying, well, I just do 5 hours a day, that's all I need, or even 4.5 hours a day, and I'm perfectly fine. Do you think
If it really works for you, congratulations. I wish I could live on 5 hours of sleep. If it really works for you and you're balanced and happy and really, you know, feeling well, then it probably works for you. I mean, there's always the normal distribution for those of you loving numbers, and 8 hours is the middle, but there are exceptions. I just think it's unfortunately also very popular to say, I only need 5 hours of sleep. It's something you can brag about. You can say, I don't need, why waste hours of sleep if I can live instead? Wasn't there saying something like, why sleep if I can do something instead? No, sleeping will actually make you more productive. Lots of research shows that if you don't sleep, you don't learn, because during night, our hippocampus for learning is transferring information from short-term memory to long-term memory. So rather than investing more time doing things, sleeping will do a lot of work in your brain without you having to do anything about it.
Great. Any other questions from the floor? There's one over there, and meanwhile I'll ask you another, which is, how do you take charge when you're really low down in the organization? How does that really work?
Good question. Sometimes it's, sometimes the only thing you can do is quit your job and start your own business. When you really are surrounded by people who treat you badly and give you no choice, what are you going to do if you don't fit in? And when you're low in the level of the organization, you're also often at the beginning of your career, and then chances are high that you're in the wrong spot, and that what the organization is demanding of you is not in line with your strength. So go where your strengths are, I would say. Think about what your key skills are and where you can really make them shine. And if the environment doesn't allow that, well, go somewhere else.
Okay. We had a question over there.
Yes. Thanks for the great insight, Sebastian from Advisory in Munich. My question is concerning NLP. Some of us might have come across these techniques in our former life, and I would be interested in your recommendation for that and your insights for NLP.
I'm not a big fan, mainly because it's kind of pseudo-scientific. It has the neuro in it, but there is no neuro in it. It's these things when people look up to the left, there's lots of theories that have no scientific basis. I find it rather manipulative in many things. It's a lot about sales, okay? It's about how getting people to do something they actually don't want to do. So it has an unscientific approach, it's sometimes a bit unethical. Nevertheless, some of the NLP techniques do work regardless of the unscientific. I'm not saying that all things in life that are unscientific don't work. Some of it works well, but it has really nothing to do with the approach we're taking here.
Okay. And we're going to have a question over there. Did you put your hand up, Nancy? Did I see you? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for all the great tips. I do have a question on what's the role of social interaction, other people, the hug, the...
Oh, huge role. We are social creatures. As the mirror neuron system shows, we have a built-in system that constantly mirrors what people around us are doing. Physical touch will do wonders. Okay, it will, because it will raise your oxytocin level, and oxytocin will make you feel less stressed. It's the hormone that is released when we bond, when we build trust. Social is, in emotional labeling, for example, if you talk to a friend, what do? You label. So yes, physical touch, physical interaction, it has been shown that people who have good social relationships live longer and are healthier. So it is huge. I just had to make a choice today on what to focus on.
Okay. We got another question through the app, and it said, where can I buy a copy of your book?
It's on pre-order because it will come out on February 21, 2017. It's published with Random House in the US. So you can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and online.
What's the name of it?
The Leading Brain.
The Leading Brain.
And it has one chapter on emotional regulation, the things we talked about, but it will also talk about decision-making, learning, habit change, how to build a high-performing team, how to build trust, all these leadership issues. Yeah.
So, and final question from me. So, with that earlier thing about negativity bias, are you saying if I say something bad to my wife, I've got to say 9 positive things before I get back on the level?
Well, interesting. Good question, because there was a researcher called John Gottman, and he's like the relationship guru. He can look at you and your wife for 10 minutes and then predict with a 90% probability of whether you will get a divorce later on or not. Okay? So he really was good. And what he did is he measured people's skin resistance, which is a sign of how stressed you feel, and he would set you up to fight, you and your wife, okay, in his laboratory. So you fight for 10 minutes, he watches you, and he found that the couples that stayed together, it can be all brought down to the 5-to-1 rule. 5 times more positive interaction than negative interaction,
Well,
even in a stressful situation. So yes, obviously, it would be a good idea if you really mean those 5 or 9 positive things also.
So I can't fake it. Okay. Finally, any last comments or words of advice for our DAPs as you leave us?
Well, I would invite you to take charge. I think that's, very often when I have coaches, they will ask me, how can I regulate myself? And they think they can, just endure the situation and be this Buddha kind of person who stays zen, whatever happens. Very often, the first thing I check is whether they have tried everything else, because it's very hard work to regulate yourself. The limbic system is very strong. To control your emotion is not an easy task. So I don't want you to walk out of here thinking, I will become a stoic, neutral person who will be in control. I want you to understand that when you're active and do something and change things, it's so much easier to feel better based on that than by trying to change your brain.
Cool. Dr. Friederike Fabritius, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.